All right, so for this piece of the project, you will build skills in using the Lehman Library to do what we would call literature review, or you might call library research. So if you're not really that familiar with the Lehman Library online search tools, I am going to show a couple of those in this here video. Um, there are many ways to go about searching for scholarly, sociological, peer-reviewed journal articles that present original research, and that's your goal here. The Lehman OneSearch can be a very useful tool. It can at times be too broad to be helpful, but let's just try a search for a sociology journal, naming, just kind of preliminary search terms. And if I take a look at that, I can see that all sorts of things come up. This is the British Journal of Sociology, and it's about the politics of naming. This doesn't seem relevant to me, right? Naming my world, finding my, these are journal articles in sociology, but they don't seem very relevant. So I'm going to change my search terms and maybe say first names instead. And then I'm starting to see some things that say first names and social middle class naming practices in Australia, right? And this is the Journal of Sociology, and it tells me here that this is peer reviewed, right? So that is something that has potential. One of the problems that I have with Lehman OneSearch is that it repeats stuff a lot, right? And so you'll see a lot of redundancies there, may not be particularly helpful. One of the nice features of Lehman OneSearch is that you can do things like check off the peer-reviewed journal box, check off the full text online box, right? This is going to filter your search to make sure you're getting a peer-reviewed journal article, that you're getting the full article, because you'll need to be able to access the full article there. In terms of topics or subjects, you could go in and check off sociology. That would even allow me to take those things out of my search terms. So I could think about first names or naming children and see if that helps. So naming preferences according to birth order, and gender in contemporary Poland. This is so it says here first year children, so you can see how my search terms went wrong there, because first and children came up, but it appears to have nothing to do with naming, because this is an article on something completely different. So if you're using Lehman OneSearch, you'll have to play around with the search terms that you choose and see what you can come up with. There are a variety of databases to search. You may be more or less familiar with some of these. JSTOR, Social Sciences Full Text. Those are a couple of the databases that will help you kind of narrow in on sociology journals. So Soc Index with Full Text is another one of those. I actually think becoming one of the more useful is actually Google Scholar. Now you can get to Google Scholar without coming through the Lehman Library, but the issue is that you won't necessarily have access to some of the journal articles that you would if you came through, right? So they have some instructions here about how you might go about things if you encounter issues off campus with using Google Scholar. So if I go to Google Scholar and I want to look for a sociology article on naming children, you can see I've already done this search. Naming children in middle-class families, that's very similar to what OneSearch turned up, only that one you may remember was specific to Australia. This one does not appear to be. It's a little bit old. It's 1965 is the publication date there. What's in a name? The significance of personal naming of mixed children for parents from different racial, ethnic, and faith backgrounds. that might have something to do with your name story that you're telling. Here's the one in Australia that we saw in Lehman One Search. Assimilation and gender in naming, right? And it's in the American Journal of Sociology in 2007. So that may have something to do with it. Surnaming children, the surnames, that's what we commonly call last names in this country. So that's probably not going to be a good choice for you. Children's first names, an empirical study of social taste, right, in the American Journal of Sociology in 1992. Social meanings of first names that may be relevant, right? In any of these cases, if you're like, okay, well, I think maybe this article might be relevant, you can go here and click to access the article. In this case, it's asking me to log in. And this is the point about having access to more articles if you go through the Lehman Library. My login is saved, so what you just saw was a very quick login process. You might have to type yours in. And we know this is about assimilation and gender and naming, and we can come read the abstract and see, okay, well, they are presenting research that shows that greater exposure to the US culture increases the chances of naming a child in English, right? They apparently are studying the difference between English and Spanish naming to determine if they're presenting their original research and not just reviewing other people's. We can go down and see that, in fact, there's a data and methods section. They're talking to us about research that original research that they've conducted on California birth records. Okay, so when you see these kinds of details about data or methods, that's usually a good indication that this is an original research paper. And again, read it, see what you can pull out, what might connect with your name story. If it's not that one, then you may navigate back and decide, maybe I want to think about looking at this article here, right? And it may take checking out a few of them. The title and the abstract are great places to start. I don't recommend reading the entire article if the title and the abstract don't sound promising in terms of having a connection to your name. Now, you may not find something that's really directly related in the sense that they may say something in this article about naming practices in Australia that applies to your story, even if you're not from Australia. And that's okay, right? So then your point would be, oh, even though my family is from this place, it turns out that this kind of pattern that was found in Australia applies to my story. And if you haven't found an article that seems relevant, there are instructions in the project piece for how you should go about dealing with that. And you should get in touch with me if you're really having a hard time, or do a check-in to get some help doing a search or something like that. But I just wanted to show these couple of ways to go about searching in the Lehman Library database. Again, there are a lot more, and if you have experience with those, you're welcome to dive into them. If you want to meet with a librarian, they are very helpful. It has also this Ask a Librarian feature here. I'm not sure, how quickly you could get help on the sort of chat feature, but it's worth a try if you feel like you're spending a little too much time working on this. It's one piece of the project, right? It's the only piece you have assigned for the week, so it should take a little bit of time, but not an excessive amount of time. Again, if you're having too much trouble, please reach out, drop in for a check-in, or send an email. We'll see very soon how the project comes together with all of the pieces. But I just wanted to say, because I've talked to several students recently, that each piece doesn't play an equal role in everyone's edited video at the end. So that certain pieces may play a larger role because they are more connected to your name. And some pieces may play a smaller role because they are less connected to your name, right? So The importance is doing all of the pieces and really reflecting on them. That'll be one of the last steps before you put together your video in next week.